Um, Hello, this is Greg Pullman, Senior Vice President of Public Policy at the Chicago Lighthouse. Today I will be talking with John Perret, who is the Executive Director of Advocacy and Policy for the National Federation for the Blind. Welcome, glad to have you with us. We'll be talking today about the Accessible Technology Affordability Act. John, could you tell me a little bit on how this particular act originated and why NFB has spearheaded it moving forward as a bill?
Yes. And Greg, thank you so much for having me on your show. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. And the combination of things. One is the fact that many blind people don't have the access technology they need to be successful in terms of education, employment, independent living, especially having it in their home. A lot of times the barrier is the fact that it's so expensive. And a couple of years ago, probably about 4 years ago, as there was a lot of discussion in Congress about making changes to our tax laws, we thought, well, that maybe we can try to bring these two things together, that we can use tax law and possibly a refundable tax credit to try to help improve opportunities for blind people to get access to technology in their hands to help with employment.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the tax laws. What tax laws do you think people will be able to take advantage of?
Well, one thing very important is this is a refundable tax credit. Not everyone knows the details of that. I certainly didn't know that at first. So a refundable tax credit means that even if you don't have to file a tax return, say you don't have any income, unfortunately that's the case with some blind people, you can still, if you are able to obtain the product, file for the credit, and you'll in effect sort of get reimbursed. So you would get a check, even if you haven't paid any taxes into IRS, you can still get a credit. So if you bought a $2,000 item, you could file for this refundable tax credit and get a check for $2,000 to in effect reimburse the expense. So it's either a credit against taxes or simply a check that will get mailed to you. We're proposing a $2,000 tax credit for use over a 3-year period. Partly the $2,000 was obtained with an amount, meaning we would, if you make it higher, it makes the bill harder to pass. And if you make it lower, it makes the credit not as useful to blind people. So 2,000 seemed to be a good balance between being of a lot of value to blind people, but also being reasonable in that we would have a real chance at getting the bill passed.
Is this a one-time tax credit?
Yes, it's not a one-time. So right now, the bill it's for 5 years. It's using their terminology. It sunsets after 5 years.
Okay.
So and it's you could get the credit, the $2,000 credit over the first 3-year period, and then you could get the credit again, which will end up being a 2-year period. But we certainly think that Congress will say, boy, this bill is really improving the lives of blind people, and it's not that expensive. So when we look at the cost to the government compared to the benefit will be great. The cost won't be very high. And so we certainly intend to work to get the 5 years extended. And this is a kind of a pretty routine process, because you hear frequently the term tax extenders, credit or refund tax extensions. And so we'll fall into that category. There's a number of other tax things that sort of go from year to year where Congress has to extend them. So once we get this passed, we'd sort of be in that same category.
Oh, that's great. What is the current status of the bill?
The current status is pretty good. So it's introduced in the House and the Senate. As you said, it's the Access Technology Affordability Act. The bill number in the House is HR 431. There's 102 co-sponsors. The sponsor is a gentleman,
Representative Mike Thompson.
from California. He is the chair of the Tax Policy Subcommittee inside Ways and Means.
Mhm.
So he's a very well-placed, he's really the top person in terms of tax policy, and he's the sponsor of the bill.
Okay.
The lead co-sponsor is a gentleman, Representative Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania, and he's also on the Ways and Means Committee. So those are two very good sponsor and co-sponsor with a total of 102. On the Senate side, we have Senator Cardin of Maryland, who is on the Finance Committee, which would be the Committee of Jurisdiction, along with Senator Bozeman from Arkansas, who is the lead co-sponsor. So they're, in both cases, it's bipartisan. There's 24 senators who have co-sponsored the bill. Just a few days ago, Senator Todd Young from Indiana co-sponsored the bill, along with Senator Patrick Leahy. Patrick Leahy happens to be the president pro tem of the Senate, so getting him to co-sponsor it shows a lot of very senior support, and that was, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. So again, very, very bipartisan in both houses, with really quite about a quarter of the Senate and about a quarter of the House have co-sponsored the bill.
Do we have representatives from Illinois, do you recall?
Yes, Senator Tammy Duckworth has co-sponsored the bill. Senator Dermott has not done that yet, but of course he's in leadership, and so it's possible, but trickier, or to get the leadership to co-sponsor legislation. Quite a number of representatives, again bipartisan representatives, have co-sponsored in Illinois. I would actually say that across the country, Illinois is one of the states that have shown the most support in having representative co-sponsored the bill. So that's something that Illinois folks should be very proud of.
Oh, yes, it sounds like we should be. What are the next steps?
Well, it's likely that a bill of this type would get merged into one of a larger package. It's hard to know exactly which package. It could possibly be one of the reconciliation package or the infrastructure package or another particular tax package. It could get passed as a standalone bill, but more frequently it's packaged into a small, what would be kind of considered a small targeted bill of this type is typically packaged in with other small targeted bills and passed as a group. So that's more the logistics. In terms of how to sort of make that happen, the more folks that co-sponsor the bill in members of Congress in the House or members of Congress in the Senate who co-sponsor the bill, especially in a bipartisan fashion, send the signal to leadership, both Republican and Democratic leadership, that this is something that the members want to move forward. So getting a quarter of the House and the Senate is definitely gets people's attention. As that number goes up, we'll get people will have even more attention, and more likely that it would get passed as part of a package. But it could get passed as a standalone bill, but that would be less kind of unusual.
If this bill passes, what do you see the most likely use that people would use the technology for?
I think that the big thing would be the various types of either refreshable braille displays or note takers, along or the screen reading software or embossers. It could be some of the magnification, but those three things are very expensive,
Mhm.
and they're absolutely necessary. And it would help put more of those items in the hands of blind people. Or maybe I should go back and even slightly um, specify. So the bill, it's a fairly simple bill. It creates a $2,000 refundable tax credit for use over a 3-year period, specifically for blind people, as blind people are currently defined in the IRS code, and specifically for access technology, especially the things I just mentioned, things like refreshable braille displays, note takers, screen reading software, screen magnification software, and embossers. And those are the things we think, like to find a job. There's so many blind people who are unemployed. To help
Mhm.
increase that, to search for a job, to get a job, you have to search for a job, and almost all jobs today are on the internet. So you need some of this equipment to be able to search for a job, then to find the job you want, to apply for a job, and even then to keep your job. Having this equipment in your home, which is what this would help do, we
Mhm.
believe would really help blind people succeed more in employment. But if they're more at their educational phase, you could help the same thing. Or even if you're not doing either of those, just with the independent living. And I think the pandemic has shown how important it is to have this equipment in your home for self-sufficiency. So I think it's something that I know I'm very excited about the potential benefits.
Mhm. And too, there's so many things within the home now that, like all the smart devices and shopping online and all of that. And it sounds like this would help with some of the digital divide that goes on among people who are disabled and others.
Yes, yes. So much of, as we move to the sort of the online world, whether telemedicine and being able to have the technology to do the telemedicine, it seems like a lot of the getting your food, whether you're using something like Instacart, but other things, having the various technologies to take advantage of all the online uh, items that people like to use. In order to have really the equal access, you have to have the ability to, um, when you buy your basic computer, you need to buy the additional things, blind people do at least, the additional things to make the computer usable, non-visually usable. And that's what this bill targets, is the extra stuff that blind people have to buy to make their technology usable in a non-visual fashion. And I think that's what will be so beneficial.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that when one buys a PC, that if you are a blind user, you have to pay another $1,200 or so to, to access it. So you have a much larger cost upfront than most people.
Absolutely. I try to tell people, it's so frequent that a blind person who still has to interact with the sighted world. So you'll buy a computer, but you might still buy a printer because you have to print things for other people. Yeah, of course, you'll have a keyboard because other people might want to use your computer, but you might have, you'll still have a monitor because other people might use it. So you tend to have your standard full-blown computer for the combination of you and for interfacing with the sighted world, but then you still might have uh, the whole combination of a refreshable braille display and screen reading software and an embosser. And that whole package is what would, if you have all that, would make you so effective. And the more we can help get those items in the hands of blind people, the better.
John, we're talking about specifically blind people themselves purchasing this equipment and having this, tax relief. Um, what about parents or others that may have, an individual who's blind living with them and is a dependent? Are they eligible for these credits?
Yes, And it's the blind person, but say you're the parent of a blind child, your child would be eligible for the credit and would still be able to receive the check. And you probably would get that as the parent.
Mhm.
But if you had, say, a blind couple with a blind child, then each of the blind parents, as a blind person themselves, would be eligible. And say the blind child would be eligible. So they'd sort of, as a family, would have access to $6,000. So I think the answer to what is yes, because it is designed that each individual blind person in a family is eligible.
Okay. I think, John, we're coming probably a little over our 15 minutes, but could you tell me where people can find out more information about this if they want to, educate themselves and educate others about this bill?
Absolutely. Probably a couple of ideas that would come to mind about where folks could go to get more information. On the NFB website, nfb.org, you can go to our fact sheet, which is sort of a one-pager that would give you a lot of the items in a very summary fashion that I've been talking about today. If you want to know more about how to track the bill itself, which I think can be very interesting, and even sign up for alerts, if you go to congress.gov, www.congress.gov, and you enter either the Senate or House bill numbers or both, that was HR 431 or S 212, and you can then click that you want to be notified when there's activity occurring on that bill, and you can then you'll get an email whenever there is occurring, and it's usually within 24 hours of whatever action took place. So that's of course, and you could do that with any legislation that you might be interested in.
Okay. John, before we wrap up, is there anything that I did not ask you that you would like to share with our listeners?
Greg, I greatly appreciate your interest in this bill, that you brought me in here today to talk about it. And I invite blind people to learn more about it, to look at our website, to look at congress.gov, to talk to your friends, and to consider maybe calling your representative and talking to people. So these are the kinds of things that you can do, and we look forward to working together. I look forward to working with you to help keep improving the lives of blind people.
That's a very important goal. I appreciate you being with us today, and I thank you for all of the information. I think it's been very helpful and enlightening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being on the show.